this is so fun, just being in the room with these incredible, I just love the variety of things that we're doing. I know you're gonna do some really neat things that are holistic. I just love that the world has embraced the fact that we're humans and we have families and health issues and we're hot messes and all of that. That's one of my favorite things that came out of the pandemic. So I wanted to contrast a little bit. This is our 19th Star Marketing Summit, and thank you, yay! And thank you. Early in the process, one of the things that I would always share was like this checklist of these are things that you need to have in place to be an effective speaker. So, I see people kind of looking at these, right? And I just felt like back in the day, we got really hung up. Sharon Baker, you probably remember this, right? Susan, I know you've been coming to marketing summits. Julie, right? It was like we got really hung up on the logistics. And I always felt like I'm never gonna quite make it to be like a higher end speaker because it's gonna take too long and it costs all this money to get graphic designers and to get all these things, right? And I just remember like when I get a professional one sheet, I'll be able to get speaking gigs that pay better or whatever, right? Did anybody else go through that? And at this point, we all probably have some decent that kind of thing. After a while, you sort of run into the right people and go to the right things, and nowadays all those things are cheaper websites and things like that, and easier than they were at the beginning. So I called this presentation the new checklist because I have a lot of people now who are saying, I don't really have a website, or when I take a look at the visits on my website, I don't really get very many. I know people that run their entire marketing out of LinkedIn. I have a really great LinkedIn profile. I reach out on LinkedIn. I do a lot of very strategically posting articles and videos in LinkedIn, and I'm able to run my business just from that. And then others do that from, like you said, Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and all those different things. So yeah, you need to have some way of reaching your audience. Shiraz, like I said, his way of reaching his audience, he's got a great email list, he's got a great Facebook group, but the way he reaches his audience is he goes around and he talks at summits. So one of the things that was missing from this checklist is it's not true in the speaking world that if you build it, they will come. So if I have a website, if I have all this social media, if I have a one sheet, it's not like I can sit and people will organically find me. I have to have some way that I'm out there meeting with people and then I'm bringing them in. So like I said, with Shiraz, he goes to these events. You got the chance to see what Chen is doing with, which platform are you using? Hello, Video Ask? It's not Video Ask. Which one's yours?
Video Ask, also Stream Alive.
It is Video Ask, okay. So, like if you do speak somewhere, which is a great way to draw people in, then what are you doing to leverage having spoken there? So I'm looking, is it Chris that's passed out some nice cards, or is that, yeah. So Chris has come and he comes to an event and he's got these, he tells a story, I think, about mountain climbing. So he's got this beautiful photo that I'm sure you took, right? And it's a little postcard. Are you going to make me mail something to myself? Promises that I made at the event to change my life? Yeah. But he's got this. He's coming to the event and he's giving this postcard out, right? We talked about learning materials and how those can be valuable. John's got the Video Ask. But what is that thing that you're doing? Those of you who are selling books, right? You offer a special deal when you get my book today. Chen does a lot of really amazing things with giveaways for engaging virtual meetings, which frankly, I have so many books. Do you have a lot of books? That's the one that I refer to probably more than any other book I own, because every page is full of these techniques that you can use. But what is that thing? It's fine to have infrastructure, which was what the old list was about. But what is it that you're doing to draw people in? And are those opportunities to draw people in more or less abundant now that we're hybrid? So just want to get a quick share. Anybody in virtual land, raise your hand, or anybody here willing to share what is it that you're doing to bring people, to help people find you, even if whether you've got infrastructure or not. Anybody? Thank you, Chris.
A lot of regular social media posts to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and getting out to events again. I was going to virtual ones, but I have quite a few in-person events I'm going to this year, and really starting to communicate with a lot more of my clients and doing targeted outreach to my clients around potential speaking opportunities, corporate offsites, adventure retreats, all kinds of stuff.
Nice.
So just getting out there and sharing a lot more about what I'm up to and what I'm doing.
And diversifying your offering, it sounds like, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rose, how about you?
What he said, and my very favorite is just live speaking. That's just, people can just feel it, like, okay, you're it. I want to work with you, and I miss that so much during COVID.
Yay, welcome back to live speaking.
Yeah, especially for coaching, getting coaching gigs, number one is getting out there and speaking. It's just incredible, wonderful opportunity. I'd like to say the de facto Speakers Association in the United States is the National Speakers Association, and we're so lucky to have National Speakers Association Northwest. We have an incredible organization, and it's been wonderful, our connection with California and Canada, especially the bordering states and countries here. It's been a wonderful organization.
And there's an incredible president-elect of that chapter, I believe, of National Speakers Association.
That's right. John is our new president. Yes.
Another thing that some of these speakers associations did is, even though they're quite exclusive, during COVID, they were opening up their chapters and letting people come to some of their meetings, which I got so much value out of that, still being able to connect with speakers during that time. So I said that I wanted to make this the new checklist, right? So I talked about the old checklist and some of the things that we talked about with the old checklist, which was you can have infrastructure, some people don't have it and they're still successful, but you've got to have some way to draw the people there. But if I were to think about what the new checklist is, as opposed to all of this, I'm going to say the new checklist, top of the new checklist, is what are you doing to intentionally have effective hybrid interactions? So do you kind of get that this is a setup, right? We talked about the new world. John gets in there and kind of tells us how to be effective. And now what I'd like to do is give you effective engagements. So lately I've been going to conferences where learning developers, instructional designers hang out, and in the gamification world. And this is, part of this that I'm about to share is from a conference I did at the Serious Play Conference in Toronto last year. And it was really just this way of sharing some of these ways that we can intentionally make hybrid work. And these are some of my favorite activities that I found work just as well in person, virtually, and hybrid. So let's just play together just a little bit. So I mentioned that I had trained a lot of speakers. Like I was at a James Malinchak event. Do you guys remember him? Big money speaker. He would do these big conferences. Some of you are nodding virtual in the virtual audience. And I remember sitting in the audience. It was like the fourth one that I'd been to. And up on the enormous stage of James Malinchak, there were two different speakers that I had trained to be a speaker. And one of them, Travis Brown, who has been a speaker at the Marketing Summit, actually called me out from the stage. He said, Sherry Prindle, she's the girl who taught me how to speak. She's here in the audience today, right? And of course, at that point, it occurred to me, why am I in the audience and not on his stage? Which is a part of creating my own stage, right? But back when I used to train new speakers, I used to always say a point not attached to a need is noise. That you can come in with a great curriculum and you can teach great information, but if the information you're giving me doesn't really meet a need that I have, then it's just like something kind of cool to know, but not something that I'll use or that's valuable. So I used to always say, spend your time doing a needs analysis, finding out what their needs are, look at your curriculum and ask yourself, how does one relate to the other, and make sure that you point to that you give the analogy, that you give the story, that you give them a chance to kind of talk about the connection between those two. So now when we talk about these interactions and engagements, I have to start over again, and I have to start preaching again. What I'm saying now is an interaction or activity not attached to an outcome clutters up your presentation. Notice that just because people don't have their cameras on, just because as a speaker you feel all alone up here when you can't see their faces, people were going, well, if you've ever had this experience, put a 1 in the chat. Yeah, hey, give me a Y if you agree with the statement that I just said. Hey, I've just been speaking to you for 10 minutes. Could everybody go ahead and put in the chat, what have you learned in the last 10 minutes that is of value to you? Like, it's so weird how needy we get as speakers to get that. Like, the biggest question that I get is, how do I get them to turn on their cameras? And I'm like, well, is it important that their cameras be on? Is there something that you're doing in your presentation that requires the camera to be on? John intentionally puts things in his presentation that require the cameras to be on, so people turn them on, right? The other big thing is what you're doing right now in your presentation, is it something that requires a chat interaction? If it's not, why are you making them type in the chat? It's not to help them, because we just established they don't really need to type in it for the interaction to work. It's where we as speakers get really weird and needy. And all those things that we're making them do, by type the Y, type the 1, all that kind of stuff, gotta just ask yourself, is it because I feel like I want to make sure they're out there paying attention? And are we maybe coming at it from assuming the negative? You know, it's that human nature thing, that survival mechanism thing where we're kind of, it's like looking out for the potential danger in the situation, right? So we go in there and we're like, oh no, I asked a question. It's been 7 seconds. I was taught by Sherry Prindle when she trained me how to be a speaker that I should wait at least 7 seconds before I should expect them to answer my question. Well, guess what? In virtual and in hybrid, how long should we wait? Longer than 7 seconds. What would you say you wait? You ask a question. You want people to answer the question. We're in a virtual situation. How long? Let me just ask, how long are you kind of waiting before you would expect a normal person to kind of be able to give their answer?
Kristen on virtual says 5.
Okay. Now, recognizing they have to hear me, there may be a lag between what I'm hearing and what they're hearing, right? Then they have to decide. Does she want me to answer that out loud and unmute and speak? Or does she want me to type that in the chat? If it's type in the chat, now they have to actually take the time to type it in the chat and send it. That's a long time. Right? 12 seconds. I'm going to say sometimes wait 20, like if what you're asking them to do, right, is going to involve a lot of typing. Here's another big one. Let them know when I ask a question, I see it all the time. We ask a question, and then when we don't get an answer, it's like, well, you didn't tell them how to answer. Hey, unmute and go ahead and just shout out an answer to this. Hey, in the chat, would you go ahead and write this? If I'm not telling them what means, now they have to add to that 12 seconds, right? They have to add, okay, which way do they want me to respond? You know, and if I say something wrong and like I'm embarrassed, it goes away. But if I chat something, it stays in the chat. People download the chat. My faux pas is there forever. Adam, I see you now. It's so wonderful to see your face. The virtual participants were hearing about Adam and not seeing his face. So what I just did was something that my friend Julie calls a rant. It's a part of the presentation style that I like to bring in. So thank you. Shout out Julie. She told me, go ahead and do your rant. It's all right. So as we think about being intentional about hybrid interactions, I just kind of have a bunch of D's. Like, what is something that you can do, and it can be tiny, like doing the exploding head that Chen had us do. What is it that you want people to disclose? Like, hey, tell me about, John had people kind of early on saying, tell me about your best hybrid experience that you ever had, right? Is it something that you want to discuss? I feel, by the way, that we may overuse this one a little bit as speakers. What is something that you might demonstrate? So one of my favorite YouTube videos is where I have a picture of ice water, because every conference room had those. And I had a whole thing that I would do, a little demonstration I would do where I pour the water all down the front of me as I was going through the room. And people were just all up in arms about it. But boy, were they paying attention. Boy, did they awake. What can you discover? Like, what can you actually kind of give them, or they have to kind of look at something and figure it out? What can you have them design, create? What kind of a myth can you have them debunk? So like when you kind of ask them to be like, people say this, but what do you think? And what can you have them determine? Like this is where they maybe decide, like how do you want to do this from now on? So I just put those all in kind of a D format to give you a sense of that this is what we're talking about when we're talking about that last item on the checklist being these engaging hybrid interactions. So here's the thing that I want everyone to kind of think about with interactions. Again, it's not interactivity for interactivity's sake. My rant was about presenters who, because they want to add interaction, they just do something that requires interaction, but that interaction doesn't do anything to forward the message or provide value to the participants. So the idea is that the activity can either be directly related to the point you're trying to make, or the activity is designed to kind of put them in a state where they're open-minded. So that if I kind of do an activity and suddenly there's kind of like this, oh, I'm in this state of, oh, this receptive state, and then the debrief can take them where we want to go. So I just wanted to give you some examples of how I kind of use the presentation formula that I recommend for hybrid, which is PEEP. First, make your point, then give an example. We already do that, but then give an engagement, and then kind of finish up the point. So it becomes that all my points are kind of wrapped in an example and an engagement. So here are some of these engagements that I'll do. So whether you're here in the room or whether you're remote, you don't have to unmute to do this, but I would like you to do it out loud if possible. I'm going to ask you to call out the color of the word, not the word. The color of the word, not the word. So I'll do the first 2 rows for you. It goes like this. Blue, red, green. What is that color? That's black. That purple looking color, that one's black, okay? Blue, red, green, black, yellow, red, yellow, black, green, blue. All right, so the bottom 3 rows, out loud, call out the color of the word, not the word. Go.
Green, black, red.
Red, blue, yellow, black, green, yellow, blue, green, yellow, black.
Yeah. So how did that feel? Right? So the key is then when you do these little interactions, then ask yourself, these are great little interactions. All of you can use. You're welcome to steal all of them. That's what they're here for. But the reason for this is to now say it's not like that activity taught the teaching point, but you can now take that activity and go, okay, what learning point could I debrief this into? What learning point could I segue this into? So anybody have any ideas? You have something that you want to present, you'd like to get the audience engaged, you want to be able to have something that pulls both the virtual and the in-person. What could you debrief this activity into?
Again, virtual can just raise their hands or just unmute. In-person's got a mic. Sherry, the first thing that I would use, this is John here, is that I would use this to tell people, learning aids, like if you aren't matching things together, then you're just making it more difficult for people. This goes for all the color-coder OCD people out in the audience.
All right, very good. Yeah, so maybe you're talking about organization, putting like things together. If you have anything along those lines, this could be a good lead into that and to what John just said. Great, yes.
You could use it as a lead-in to making a point about perception and layers of perception.
Excellent.
And so you might think something's really obvious, but there's a whole nother layer underneath it that's
perfect. It doesn't matter. That's the thing. I like to use these nice generic activities that are super engaging, that get people into like a state where they're like, oh, wait a minute, you just woke me up. You have to be able to connect it kind of quick and easy, right? But boom, they're in that state. So let's throw a couple more out there that I tend to use to do exactly that. So I used to teach grammar and proofreading classes. I have my master's in linguistics and all of that. So when I was teaching compound sentences and the rule of compound sentences, we'd go over that. And then when it was done, I'd say, okay, now the problem is you learned this in school and we didn't remember it. So how are we going to remember it from this point forward? Well, I'll tell you, we're going to do the run-on wrap. And I would wrap it, 2 thoughts, 2 things, comma with a dot, comma with a fanboys, 2 thoughts. I'd do it twice, and then I'd say, all right, everybody together. And at the and then everybody wrapped it. I say, great, when you go back to work, when people say, what did you learn from the seminar? What are you going to say? And then they said the wrap, right? So I'm just trying to show you just an enormous variety of things so that you can find something that really fits your style. Julie's laughing because she took a video of me doing this once. It's still on YouTube, right? From that same one, I like to do puzzles like this, and these work incredibly well for both for the hybrid situation. So my question for you is, what are the elusive characters? Missing 2 letters or numbers, what are they? The missing 2 letters or numbers? All right, so either out loud or in the chat, feel free. An R and an E, everyone says. Well, it's actually not an R and an E, it's a C and a T. W-A-T-E. C-M-T-L-O-N. Yeah, C and a T. Yeah, because see, notice that up top, there are these 2 sentences, and I have the first letter of each of the 2 sentences. W for what? R, the elusive character. See, W-A-T-E-C-M-T-L-O-N. That's just the first letter of each of the words in the 2 sentences above. It has nothing to do with watermelon. Again, right, think about things that it's just a simple activity, right? It got people thinking, because the problem is that when we're busy speaking, then they're not thinking. They can go into that little hypnotic state, right? So now I got them thinking. Now they're in a thinking state. What could I debrief this into? Any ideas?
Hey, Sherry, wait, I got this for you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, back to you.
Any ideas?
Any idea?
Kind of what you said, Rose, you know, the whole idea of like first impressions, like your first thought of something, that kind of thing. It could definitely be something like that. Attention to detail, John, to kind of speak to some of the things that you were saying there. Oh, good, Rose has got one.
Yeah, how you can miss something that's right in front of you because you're expecting something else.
Beautiful, right? So the idea is have these activities, get them thinking, and then segue them into teaching points. The next one is another puzzle. I simply ask, which one is the odd one out? And for the virtual audience, I have this be a poll, because I used to have them put it in the chat, but now I go ahead and I have a poll, and they vote which of the 4 is the odd one out. So what is the odd one out? What do you think? It's got to be the B, because the rest are A's, he says. It's got to be the square, because the rest are circles. It's got to be the yellow, because the rest are red, which leaves us an odd one out, because the only one that doesn't have anything about it that would make it the odd one out is the A in the red circle. The A in the red circle having nothing about it that would make it the odd one out makes it the odd one out. Isn't that odd? Now, I've been using this for lots of things. One of the things I really have this be is how many times do we pay attention to the squeaky wheel and give attention to like that anomaly, difficult situation, instead of paying attention to the majority the silent majority who really provide value, and they're there and they're paying attention all the time. Here's another one, works great for both. I'm going to ask you to add these numbers in your head. And when we get to the line at the bottom, then we're going to shout out as fast as we can. And in the chat, I want you to put as fast as you can, what is the result? Here we go. 1,000 plus 40 plus 1,000 plus 30 plus 1,000 plus 20 plus 1,000 plus 10. Chat or shout out. What's the result?
5,000.
All right, well, listen, I got a bunch of 5,000s.
4,100.
Oh, wait a minute. Look at that. Isn't that funny? Like, everyone's like, I get the little emoji, you know, like this from the virtual audience. It's the goofiest thing, but it perfectly demonstrates the whole Daniel Kahneman thinking fast and slow, like the fast thinking brain and the slow thinking brain, and how we skip the middle steps and go to the end. So that one's a really, really good one. It's super fast. It gets people laughing, right? They end up having a lot of fun with that. Exactly. So as we kind of finish this up, then the question is kind of how can you help them discover what it is that you're sharing rather than teach or tell? you can ask them for applicable situations and use their situations as the basis for the narrative that you use to debrief these activities so that you don't have to come up with them like I've asked you to do on the spot during this presentation. And of course, the key is for them to be able to use what was presented. So I have a million of them, and it's kind of my specialty, so I appreciate your interaction in this. I was originally going to present from 10:35 to 11:35, but someone that I've been trying to get at the Marketing Summit for a very long time agreed to come in and do a really short piece for us that I think you'll find to be really, really valuable.